Hey everybody, Mr. Farmer here. So today we're talking about profit maximizing in the long run, and then we're going to be talking about different types of industries: increasing, decreasing, and constant cost industries. So a couple assumptions, just from us for what we're dealing with, is that in the long run, firms can enter and exit the industry. In the short run, they cannot do that. So this is a long run conversation. And second is we are still talking about and so all the firms we're going to be talking about have identical cost curves. So that's going to play a role as we keep going and part of our general assumptions that we have to have. So overall, after all the long-run adjustments are going to be completed, the product price will be exactly equal to each of the firm's minimum average total cost. Again, this is for perfect competition. Why is this the case? Because in the short run, firms are going to see somewhere else producing at a profit. When they can have the opportunity to enter into that market, they're going to. And if they're currently producing at a loss, then the first chance they get, they're going to be leaving the industry. Under pure competition, firms are free to enter and leave industries. So if firms make a profit, then other companies will join in. If their companies are producing a loss, they'll leave. And this will go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until eventually the industry is going to be at rest, it's going to be stable. And we see this, we get this, it's a logical thing. So for instance, here we have nominal and real profits of corporations from 1990 to 2010, 2011. A little reminder, real means adjusted for inflation versus nominal is just the typical for that year's average prices. So usually we do talk about real. We can compare different years dealing with price changes. So for instance, 95 to 97, so here's 95 to 97, right about here. Yeah, you want to enter into the market because it's producing a profit. Yeah, go into the industry. How about from 97 to 2000, right about here? They're losing money here from the peak down to here. So a downturn, some shrinking of certain firms or industries. How about 2000 to 2005? Okay, that was in a boom. Think about boom and bust cycles, 1920s, 1930s in U.S. history. So definitely firms want to enter into this industry at this point. Yes, you're going to want to go into it. But then we get the bust portion of that series. And from 2007 to 2009, yes, firms are definitely leaving. And then finally in 2009, 2010, because that's where this data ends, people are entering into the industry once again. Okay, so the reason I point this out is it's logical. We see this, we understand this, we're just identifying it. So in the long run, firms are still producing at their profit maximizing output, the marginal revenue equal marginal cost. They're also going to be producing at a profit, economic profit of zero, because if they're producing at a profit, firms are going to keep entering in, producing at a loss. It's the ebb and the flow, it's the balance of it all. And so we're going to be producing an economic profit of zero in the long run, which means they're producing at a normal profit. Again, that's the revenue required to cover the economic cost. So overall, the industry is at rest. There's no tendency for firms to enter or leave. There's no motivation for them to do that also. So as firms enter into this market, three things can be happening. And we call these three things increasing cost industries, decreasing cost industries, or constant cost industries. And what these refer to is as firms enter into the market, do the cost curves actually do anything? So far, we just haven't moved anything, and so that's going to be one of these. What can actually happen? So as firms enter into the market in the long run, what happens? The first one is the increasing cost industries, and this is actually most typical industries. Firms are going to experience a higher cost as the industry expands. Why? Because the demand increases for the overall original product increases. So that's our starting point. So we're going to assume that you're producing at a profit. So because of this profit, then firms are going to be entering into this industry. It makes sense so far. So then we have this resource market. So let's kind of draw it down here. We haven't talked about resource markets, but it's just going to be just a supply and demand curve. So if there's more firms entering into this market and this market needs good X, whatever X is, and that's going to be one of the factors of production. Well, now that there's more firms in the industry, the number of consumers has increased, and that's a determinant of demand. So the demand for this good has increased. What's happened? The price for this resource has increased. Why did this happen? Because firms joined the industry. This is why it's an increasing cost industry, and I kind of liken it to diseconomies of scale. So as we can see what's going on here, and this is not a proper use of these graphs, but I think it actually does help to make sense. At first, you're over here at the SRAC 4, okay? And then more firms enter into this market, and that pushes your cost curves up a little bit. You're actually getting the SRAC 5. You're still going to break even in the long run, but your costs are more expensive. And over here, it's because there's been an increase in demands, and the ability to supply that resource hasn't changed at all. So we have an overall increase in this. The second was the decrease in cost industry, and this is, as you can see, for more typically emerging or newer markets where people are still figuring things out. Firms experience lower costs as the industry expands. It's going to be the opposite of what the early one is. So, kind of starting position. The demand for the whatever the original good is increases. There's an increase in profits. So far the same. More firms join the industry. So far the same. The expansion of the industry decreases production costs. Now that's what's a little different. So what could this be? So the example I give is I think of the computer industry in the 80s. Okay, you have the Bill Gates of the world and all those other people working out their garages saying, hey, I think these ones and zeros are going to be something. And they're all trying to put all of the computer chips in themselves. They're doing all the soldering work themselves. They're making everything themselves. And so it takes some time. And then the company will say something like Intel says, hey, I think I can make a microchip for you. I'm going to specialize in just this one aspect. And so a resource industry, computer chips, has emerged, and the monitor industry, like gateway monitors, has emerged. Okay, we're going to produce this for you. Why? Because people believe in this market. And so a resource market has been created, and because of specialization and all of that kind of conversation, it's actually cheaper to get the resource products than it used to be. So essentially, we're in the economies of scale. So originally we're at this SRAC 1, but you know what? Now we move down, and now we're at this SRAC 2. Why is this the case? Well, let's just say you start out at this level right here. There's still an increase in demand for this resource market. So you're still going from D to D1. Okay, just going to be this curve right here. What we see is there's also an increase in the supply of these resource products. And so we go up from originally at the PMO right here to now we're at PM1. And then eventually maybe PM2, because as firms entered in, this resource market got created. This is a decreasing cost industry. And the last one is a constant cost industry, and this is actually the one that we default to. So if it isn't stipulated anywhere, we assume it's a constant cost industry. Since the entry or exit of the firms does not affect the resource price of the unit's cost, the cost of the industry is constant. The demand may increase along with the quantity of the output, but because it's constant cost, the changes will not change. So again, we're kind of at that constant returns to scale, this minimum point. So over here, the idea is that we're originally at our equilibrium price. There's an increase in demand. Again, the demand is caused by the increase in number of suppliers of the good. This is the market for good, the resource price of good X, whatever the good is. But then the ability to produce that good has been proportionately increased. And what we see is that there's no change here. Now, statistically, highly unlikely that this would happen, but we do it this way because, again, we're getting the basic rules down. How do these things look? Because it does make it more complex to look at these graphs, which you'll see in a second. So usually we do default to constant cost for that reason. So here we have an increase in cost. So the idea is that you start out when you're producing at a profit. Okay, so we're starting with a profit, which means in the long run, more firms will enter and you're going to break even. So this is it. This is the more firms entering in from S over to this S1, this blue curve right here. And your original cost curves are these black curves, the margin cost curve, the average cost curve. I didn't do an average variable cost. But because this is an increasing cost industry, as more firms enter into this market, there's an increase in the average cost curves. And so these costs are going to go up and up and up. You do notice they still break even. My marginal revenue equal to my marginal cost is equal to my price equal to my average total cost. So we're still breaking even here, but it's at a higher cost than the original break even would have been. We do notice though, the industry does produce more units. They produce at a Q1 versus a Q level. It's just at a higher price than it would. We have the decrease in cost industry. So again, as more firms enter in, there's going to be now a decrease in average total cost curves. So we're producing at original profit. So we have these black curves are the original curves, just so we can tell that. And as more firms enter into this market, there's now a decrease. The black goes to blue, so we're now at a decreased marginal cost, decrease in average total cost. We're still breaking even right here. My demand is still equal to my average total cost at this point. I do still have an increase in the quantity. There's still more stuff being produced, and now it's at a lower price point than it would have been the original. And then finally, we have the constant cost, which is as if there's a profit, more firms enter in, and there's no change. There's still an increase in the industry output, but the individual firms are going to change over here. So there's it all kind of in one image in case you guys need that. So we have the increasing, decreasing, constant cost. One thing you might need to be checking on is just because there's an increase in demand for this, for instance, if we look at the constant cost for a second, there's an increase in overall industry output, but the individual firm, there's a decrease. So you do need to be careful about those kinds of things. All right, thank you. Hopefully that helps. See you next time. Bye.